Well, welcome to Swim Angelfish, free podcasts and webinars. And today, Ailene and I are going to be talking about some tips for parents. And we just want to explain a little bit about what is happening and why they do it and how to address it. So when you're thinking about your kids and going to swim, or your young adults, and you want to explore the opportunities in the pool, this might give you a few tips to see what is happening, why your kids are doing certain things, and how you can possibly address it.
Yeah, and what we're doing is we're using the acronym PARENTS, and for each letter of the acronym, we're going to give you some insight into how you can better help your child in the water and get them as independent as possible.
So let's get started. We're going to start by talking about the properties of the water. This is something probably you don't think that much about, right? But we're going to talk just about three of them. And one is the surface tension. Yeah. And that is when you see somebody jump in a pool and it kind of breaks that elastic band on the top of the water, you might see that some of your kids love breaking that surface tension. They love hitting their arms on the top. They kick with their legs way out of the water. They repetitively jump in. And that surface tension can be very rewarding to some of the swimmers.
Yeah, I'm thinking about like swimmers with sensory issues and autism. You know, a lot of times they're flapping their hands or they're walking on their toes because they want that input. They want that snap into their muscles and joints. Well, think about what's happening every time they're snapping into the water and splashing into the water. Their whole body is getting satiated with that input.
And your skin is your largest organ, right? And where are you? Where you're in your swimsuit with so much of your skin exposed. So surface tension, that's why it feels good. And it might be what you're seeing and allowing a little extra jumping. And then we're going to move on to buoyancy.
Yeah, buoyancy is so important because a lot of times if your child has a physical issue, everybody thinks, oh, the water is so great because buoyancy assists with movement, right? So if you have a weak muscle, it might be nice to be in a buoyant environment so it's easier to move. So I want to talk about buoyancy in the sense that yes, it's easier to move, but it can also be a problem with some of our swimmers because we're used to moving in gravity. We're used to getting input into where our bodies are in space. And in the water with buoyancy, it's like you're in outer space. So I'd like to give you some ideas of how to control the buoyancy so you can use it in ways that are easier, but also decrease anxiety that it might be providing in your swimmer.
And so then the last thing in properties of the water is hydrostatic pressure. And some of you might love a really deep, hard hug from somebody and you love that feeling. Yeah. Well, if a swimmer, a child is a seeker, they might love going to the bottom because of the property of hydrostatic pressure. And it's important for you as a parent to know they may go under at 3 feet, at 5 feet, at 7 feet, and guess what? The deeper you go, the more pressure there is. And so the hydrostatic pressure is sometimes a key reason why you're seeing something, and what you can do about it is you can do it in 3 feet, in 6 feet, in 8 feet, and have a nice routine and understand your swimmer might be seeking that hydrostatic pressure.
I mean, honestly, the water is the only place that 360 degrees of your body is getting that input all at once. It is such a calming, satisfying feeling.
So hopefully you learned 3 things about the properties of the water. And now we're going to move on to the A, which is awareness.
Yes.
And we would like to talk about safety and a couple of things as parents, especially if your swimmer is somebody who likes to run and get in the water and wants to get away from you and get to any body of water because they're attracted to it. Have them ask before they get in the bathtub, have them ask before they get in the swimming pool, and have the routine of asking. Yeah. The second thing with awareness is think about this for a minute as a parent. Can you expose your child to the rescue tube? It's at every pool. Have them touch it, have them feel it, figure out a way maybe on your computer to show them what it is, but have everyone, no matter what sensory motor issue that they're having, that they're aware of what a rescue tube is. And I think that's a great tip for parents.
Yeah, and even an awareness of like the dimensions of the pool. This is the shallow area, this is the deep area, and that also improves safety a lot. Those are great points. I also wanted to talk about just the awareness of what a contained environment like the pool can do for your child that might be impulsive, that might bolt, that might have trouble staying in one space. The pool is a contained environment where they're getting all of this sensory feedback, where they can have this experience of exercising their muscles and self-regulating and getting all of this good stuff. But also, as a family, you could go and enjoy this for recreation and leisure. It can be not only therapeutic and good for your child, but a great place just to enjoy and have fun, and where your child seems much more similar to their peers. Whether it's a physical issue that they have, a sensory issue, the water is like an even playing field. Everyone's at eye level. Kids with sensory issues are feeling calm and regulated. Kids with physical issues can have some more independence if you use the right equipment, and it's just a great environment.
It's so funny because no matter how long we're together and what we're doing, I'm actually thinking of something new as you're talking, and I'm thinking about my swimmer, and I'm thinking about containment. She uses a wheelchair, she goes to a pool and swims, and sometimes community people don't know when they see someone in a wheelchair. Should they say hello? Should they give them eye contact? And the pool even makes an even playing field for that. If you're swimming in a lane next to a swimmer that uses a wheelchair and that is saying hi to you, you're going to interact and you're going to say hi to them. So it's the containment of that situation, and the fun, the social, and the leisure can expand even through the community members.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, so funny. So now that brings us to routine.
Yeah.
We all have our routines. We had our routines in setting everything up for today. And some excessive routines that you parents might be seeing with your kids. And some of the excessive things might be excessive drinking of the water, excessive splashing of the water, excessive jumping. So when you're seeing these excessive behaviors, understand they might be jumping because we talked about that surface tension.
Yeah.
Understand that they might be splashing because we talked about how good that might feel. And understand this excessive drinking. There's so many nerve endings in your mouth. Right. And for kids that don't talk so much, they have access to swirling and spitting and moving things in their mouth, that it is just an opportunity and it's right there. So manage it the best you can, but understand a little bit about why you're seeing it.
Yeah. So Cindy's kind of talking about things that are happening in the water, and I'd like to talk about the routine of when you're getting in and out of the water. Yeah. So think about your child that has a physical issue. Are you feeling prepared of how you're going to get them in the pool, out of the pool? Is there a pool lift? Is there going to be a space where you can change them? If you're a mom that's bringing their teenage son to the pool, is there going to be an environment and a locker room that you can take him into so that you can change, and it's not just a woman's locker room or a men's locker room? So maybe be proactive with the routine and call ahead of time. Find out from the aquatic director what the situation and the physical space is like, and then prepare yourself. Maybe bring an extra person with you that day. Maybe go to the pool ahead of time if you have a sensory child, and take some pictures so you can prepare them for what things are going to look like. But it's always best to be proactive with that.
And I think seeing it for yourself as a parent, going and seeing how many doors do you have to go through to get to the pool. If your child may like stimming on the doors, maybe there's a different way you can go in. Maybe if you come in your suit, you could avoid the locker room altogether. And a really good idea, if you're taking your child to a pool, is ask them, would they watch our lifeguarding webinar? It is a free resource, and it's a webinar that talks about soft science to approach differently, and it complements the education of a lifeguard to be a little more aware of anybody with a sensory or a motor issue and how they can make them feel more welcome and safe in the environment.
Yeah. Sometimes they just don't know.
Yeah.
There's no education out there that's teaching that to a lifeguard. So sometimes as a parent, we might get upset or angry, like, why aren't they accepting this? Why are they yelling at my child for wearing headphones in the water? Why are they blowing a whistle when my child's moving quickly? Don't they know that scares him? But they don't. So educate instead of taking it personal, and say, hey, there's this great lifeguard webinar, and it just empower people to get more educated. And last thing I wanted to talk about is transitions. So some of you, once you get in the water, your kids are not going to want to get out of the water. So have a plan for the transition out of the pool. Don't have them doing the wild sensory input right before you're going to get out. That is not the time to do forward rolls and start jumping. That's a time to maybe do a calming, more rhythmic activity. Maybe making a train along the side of the pool, 10 jumps on the stairs. Now we get out and it's towel time. think about the transition, whether it's giving them a 5-minute warning, whether it's showing them a timer, or whether it's just structuring the activity, first this, then this.
And that can be used for anybody with just anxiety, delays, discomfort, and any swimmer, a typical swimmer.
Yeah.
How many times have you seen typical swimmer in a swim class, in a learn to swim program, and they don't want to get out? And if you come up with some kind of ritual and routine to help them get out, it's going to help everybody in the class anyway.
Yeah.
So I think that brings us to equipment.
Right.
And now this is for parents. This is a sort of sensitive subject, right? Some parents have 3 children under the age of 5. Some have extra help. You can bring a companion or a nanny or a grandma or something. And some of you are going to the pool by yourself. Right. So how do you decide as a parent to use a float, to use fins, to have a water experience, but figure out how you're going to manage everything? And with floats, as parents, you might think about putting on a float belt. You might think about a swim Oscar, water wings, the puddle jumpers, a life jacket. I've seen all different things in the water. And as a parent, you're going to make your own decisions. But I think Ailene and I, with 21 years experience in adaptive swim, what we would say is think about this and have some self-awareness. Because if you always have a puddle jumper on, it might be really hard to get that puddle jumper off. If your swimmer is finally independent swimming with flippers, what if you're not arm's length from your swimmer and one flipper falls off? Yeah. What is that going to cause? So when you're thinking about how you're using a noodle, how you're using floats, flippers, life jackets, think about all the different ways you're using them, and think about, do you have option to not use some float for part of the water experience? You want to expand on that equipment?
It's just so important, because if you're always using equipment and in the unfortunate event that the equipment gets away from them, or they have more confidence than they have skill, and they jump in the pool without the equipment, you have a big problem. So always have opportunities for no equipment. But that also brings me to the kids maybe that have more of a physical issue or low muscle tone. The equipment that's out there that kind of is what's recommended when you take a young child in the pool, like a puddle jumper or a life jacket or a float belt, might not work for your child that is weak or has low tone. And they might be extremely wobbly and
like
unstable.
A bobber.
Exactly. They might just fall forward and go underwater. So I want to open up your eyes to the fact that watch what your child does with some equipment. And now you understand some of the reasons we talked about buoyancy and not controlling their body. I want to give you a couple of ideas of equipment for those kids that aren't traditional, but might work better to give them independence.
You mean somebody like maybe Rett syndrome or Fragile X or cerebral palsy or some kind of physical limitation, or like you talked about the muscle tone, low muscle tone?
Yeah, or muscular dystrophy. So for a child like that, have you ever thought about taking 2 small dumbbells, putting one under each arm, making sure they're really padded ones, and you hold their hands down, and then they can practice just balancing with the dumbbells under their arms. Sometimes I even move the dumbbells so that they make a V, so in case they have poor head control, that kind of supports their head, and they can feel what it's like to experience independence in an upright position. I mean, that's wonderful.
Well, imagine it from going from being in a life jacket or a puddle jumper or something to being able to experience being upright in the water and have some control, the self-confidence.
I mean, nothing breaks my heart more than when I see a child that's kind of strapped in something and they're just looking at the ceiling. I mean, how is that engaging and motivating? And lastly, I just want to say there's these like nice large squishy noodles that we get from Costco called fluid noodles, and sometimes we use them in different positions depending on what the child's body does. Use them in the front, they can lean over it. Use them in the back and around their arms and anchor the front together, and you could make like a little bit of a boat. Play around with equipment and see what is going to help your child be in the best, most accessible, upright position to to interact and just enjoy being in the water.
And we could talk about equipment forever, right?
Well, that's why we have an equipment webinar.
That's right. So we have an equipment webinar. You can watch it. You can get some other ideas. And we're going to move on now to the topic of never give up. And in Never Give Up, in all these years, we've heard so many different stories, and we've helped people overcome things. And people have told us maybe they went to lessons for 2 years and never went underwater. We want to talk about just a couple of stories. Yeah. We had a boy recently that came. He had a seizure while he was in the water in 2017, and the mom tried all things. 3 years later, they came to the Swim Whisper program, and they were able to overcome the roadblock, get in the pool. And it's so important to never give up. So please, we know you guys have it rough. You're going to appointments. You're trying to get different therapists. You're maybe even traveling out of the country to go to certain programs. We understand all of this, and never giving up when it comes to the water is so important, because the water as a family recreation and leisure activity, pools, lakes, ocean, vacation, you want everybody to be able to have the water experience together.
Yeah. And for me, never give up also is saying you don't even know the potential your child has in the water. Don't think it's enough just for somebody to bring your child in the water and have them float hanging over a barbell. Have the expectation that every child has an ability to swim. So that's what I want to talk about with Never Give Up, because I'm thinking of two stories of both are now young adults. They're in wheelchairs. They are unable to walk. And guess what? We've figured out ways to get them safe and independent without equipment, so that part of their routine each week, 2 to 3 times a week, they go with their caregiver to the YMCA. The caregiver helps them get in and out of the pool on the lift, but once they're in the water, because they physically can't come up and breathe, they figured out ways to swim on their belly, they roll over, they rest on their back and take a breath, they go back on their belly, and then they get the side, and they safely swim laps. Now that opened up a whole world of aerobic exercise, socialization,
inclusion,
and independence.
Right. Diversity and inclusion, you can expect it. You can find somebody at the place that you're going to, whether it's an aquatic center or a fitness center. Ask them, what do you have for inclusion? Are you offering any diverse programming that my child could fit into?
So never give up. If you want more, you can achieve more. Don't just settle on this is just okay and fine.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of kids hanging over a barbell or going to programs, and the expectation wasn't that they're going to actually learn to propel, or for that matter, even being able to be on some kind of a swim team.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us to the tips.
Yes.
And although we could talk forever, when we're speaking about the tips, we're just talking about time, temperature, and training. So when we're talking about that, think about your schedule. It's so busy, and we totally identify with that, but we have seen some remarkable improvements. Somebody going to a pool that happened to be 84 degrees, and they are at a YMCA, let's just say, and it's 84 degrees, and they really don't make much progress. The parents kind of don't think they don't even like the pool, is what they're thinking. Meanwhile, they have an opportunity to go to a recreation swim at a small swim school that's warm. And they go to that and they see a completely different child, because the time of day changed, the temperature of the pool changed. And it wasn't that they didn't like it. It's maybe they were a little bit cold, and maybe it was too overwhelming visually or auditorily or something like that.
Yeah. The other thing is to empower parents to know you can ask at swim schools that you go to, what's the training of the instructors?
Right.
Sometimes there's no special training for the instructors that are teaching children with special needs. And this upsets me so much, because training is available. It's available through these free resources and webinars we created. We have an online certification program where it's available. You shouldn't settle for just the patient instructor that's going to get in the water and just try things with your child. They deserve to be with someone that's trained, so the expectation is that they're going to learn to swim.
Yeah, and I think empowering you guys to ask when you go, you're so happy they're taking your swimmer, right? We hear that a lot. Yeah. We're just so happy we get to be in the program because our other kids are at that program.
That's right.
But asking the question of, you are in a Learn to Swim program, you're using WSI, Red Cross, private method, what else does this instructor have that's going to be seeing my child with some challenges, whether it's ADHD, anxiety, a general delay or discomfort, some kind of advanced training.
Yeah.
It's out there, it's here. We have actually 5 free webinars that people could watch.
And you can even go on our website and there's a map where you can hit locations where there are certified instructors. And we have about 200 people around the world that are certified. So wherever you live, wherever you go, you can find an instructor that has some training.
And beyond that, you could find some funding to allow the aquatic center that's near you to get 5 people certified.
Yeah.
And have a swim whisper, because you deserve one. And then we're going to talk about just some swim ideas.
Yeah.
So we want to give you hopefully some ideas. Number 1 is take side. When you're in the water and you get in, our natural instinct is to hold, and we're not really sure what the water properties are going to be like, but try if you can to get the swimmer to lean forward and take side, or to stand up and walk over and take side, or when you go in the deep, promote the taking side and holding till they can walk down the wall and find their feet and stand up. It's a safety measure.
Yeah. I mean, some of our kids can't hold equipment. So honestly, if there was a rescue or if somebody was having trouble, you first reach, throw before you go and jump in. If they won't grab onto something, that makes it much harder. So when you're with your child in the water, work on having them hold on to equipment. And if they let go, let them feel the consequence of
just
that.
push a little bit.
And push a little bit and give them the equipment again to grab onto it instead of grabbing them.
Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about that in space management. You know, sometimes if you're too close, they'll keep coming back to you. But if you go that 6 inches a little farther, they have to make the decision, and they actually will hold a kickboard or a noodle or a dumbbell. And teaching that skill can really improve and have a successful save. One of the other things is all kids learn body parts. And so when you're teaching some of the rollovers or changing directions or just floating in the water, think about the body parts. For example, if you're going underwater, mouth, nose, eyes, hair, under. That can be a nice way to teach going underwater versus just go under.
And the practice at home. Sometimes this is a hard skill to work on with your child. Don't be afraid to fill the bathtub with just 6 inches of water. Gently start by pouring water from the back of their head to the front. It's a little bit alarming to do it straight in the front, but start by pouring water over their head. Start by them being grounded in the bathtub and putting body parts in the water themselves and getting them comfortable with it. And this grounding is a big concept for me because we talked about buoyancy as something that is affecting your child. Well, sometimes you have to control this buoyancy. So my tip for you on how to control buoyancy, whether your child's anxious when they're getting in the pool because the buoyancy scares them, or whether your child has a physical issue and they get in the pool and they just can't control their body, my tip is the same for both. And that's you need to weight them down a little bit so they can feel where they are in space. That could be done as simply with a cotton shirt or with socks in the pool or with Converse tennis shoes that are canvas and they sink a little, wearing that in the pool so they can feel their feet. That little tip, I gave a parent that tip over the phone and they never ended up coming to see me after that because the problem was solved. That tip is really valuable to understand when to use it.
And that brings us to the swim tip webinar. So if you liked this, then you want to go ahead, sign into the swim tip webinar, either watching it or listening to it, and you'll get 15 to 20 more tips based on roadblocks that Ailene and I have identified as an OTPT team, working together for the last 21 years and hoping for global education and sharing of our webinars and our podcasts.
Yeah, and it really does all begin with you. You're the parents and you're with your children all the time and you're deciding whether to take them for swim lessons. You are taking them in the water just to enjoy them and have this beautiful recreation and leisure experience. And what we wanted today was to teach you some of the underlying reasons of why you might be having certain issues, some of the things you might be seeing that you're not understanding.
You're like, why is this happening?
And then how to address it and what you can do so that it's successful. So hopefully we accomplished that today.
Yeah, and I also want to say that when you go to horseback riding, karate, you're always looking for programs. The Swim Whispers offers a systematic approach for your Learn to Swim instructors so that they do get some training to help you.
Yeah, and we believe that all children of all abilities have the potential to be safe and independent swimmers, and that's what we're here to do.
Thank you.
Thank you.